Hello and welcome. My name is Lubna Allam and I'm the Head of Finance Shared Services for J Murphy and Sons. What am I going to talk about today? Well, I had the pleasure of presenting at the PPN network last year. So what I'm going to talk about today is the journey 12 months on, challenges, we can't seem to get enough of them, how we've utilised reporting to overcome those challenges, technology, how we're continually improving on a daily basis, and what does the future hold for finance shared services, particularly within the AP space. So, journey till now. This time last year, we were getting ready for a mass implementation of D365, that's Microsoft Dynamics 365. Our go live target date was the 1st of July. And this time last year, when I was here talking to you guys, it was around preparing ourselves for go live. So during that time, we were looking at data migration, reconciliations, data cleanse, you name it, we were up to it. We were due to go live on the 1st of July. Nonetheless, we went live on the 4th of July, date that we're not going to forget. At that point in time, we migrated over 14,000 open, unapproved invoices from AX09 to D365. Okay, so what was our cut-off? We cut off 2.5 weeks before the 4th of July, which meant we had a backlog of invoices plus the 14,000 invoices that we were migrating across. So what we were doing during that time between the cut-off and going live with D365, well, we were prepping, we were data cleansing, we were doing supplier statement recs. Then the day came and we went live on the 4th of July. And so all migrations had happened. The system went live without a hitch, thankfully. We pulled an all-nighter and the business went live. Now, this wasn't just an impact for finance. This was an impact right the way across Murphy's. It touched everybody because we were now doing online timesheets. We were now doing online expenses. We were raising requisitions on live. All the workflows were built within the system. So the first couple of days wasn't too bad. Everybody was finding their feet. We had super users dotted right the way across the business. The trainers were on hand to help sites and help the business basically use the system. So what impact did that have on AP? Well, let me tell you, it had a massive impact on AP because not only did we migrate across 14,000 invoices that were unapproved on the system from the legacy system, we also had a stack of invoices building up, waiting to go on to the new system. Now, at a point in time, we ended up with something in the region of about 28,000 unapproved invoices on our system. Suppliers, obviously, we did a mass payment run before we went live to pay everything that was approved on the system before we went live. But needless to say, I'm sure many of you experienced this from a compliance point of view, that the business don't usually do what they need to do at that point in time. Then the pressure comes after because suppliers are now getting anxious. They want to be paid. We're part of construction industry. They want to know when they're going to get paid. Now, of course, in the old world, people used to run around with an email, used to get wet signatures, used to be able to bypass the system controls. Well, not anymore. That wasn't going to happen, not with D365. Nobody could get round it. You either had to go and raise a retrospective order, which had to go through workflow. You had to go through all the relevant approvals. You had to have the GRN in the system for us to three-way match. So that became a real barrier for us because the business, it almost hit them sideways. They just weren't expecting the amount that they would have to do in the system in order to get their invoice approved. And lo and behold, when invoices weren't approved, whose fault was it? It's AP. They're not paying. We're not paying suppliers. And I don't know how many times I've probably said this, is that we're not in the business for not wanting to pay suppliers. If you comply with the process, your invoices will get paid. So what did that result in? That resulted in us doing daily payment runs. Literally, we were doing payment runs on a daily basis. We even got to a stage where I suppose our migrated invoices that were obviously migrated for a reason, they hadn't cleared because there was an issue with them, i.e. a PO issue or a GRN issue. Our newer invoices started to go through. And so what we started to do is actually pay invoices that weren't quite due yet, that were actually going through the system. So again, very, very challenging time. Given the volume of invoices that we had to increase our staff. So we went up to 30 people processing invoices. We had temps, contractors coming out of our ears, desk space was an issue. Literally, it was just like we were throwing bodies at this process. And so as we go through that journey, we were monitoring our KPIs on a daily basis. We had SMEs, we had system issues, you name it, we had it. So what was our road trip really like during that period of time? Non-compliance was amplified. It just, before, when you couldn't see what the issues were or you couldn't quantify them, now we had a system that gave us data that showed us what was wrong, what areas were wrong, how many of our invoices were coming in that were going straight into workflow, why were they going into workflow? Now, again, a theme that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, the lack of ownership, which was driven by a lack of understanding in the system and the end-to-end process. Now, a lot of people that were doing UAT were following test scripts. And there's usually very few people that really want to break the system and really understand it. But we had pockets of that right the way across the business where people really did not understand how the system worked, how it was put together, what the delegation was doing, what the workflows were doing. And very, very quickly, we had to dispel the myth that D365 works. There's nothing wrong with the system. If there was something wrong with the system, we wouldn't be able to pay our suppliers. We wouldn't be able to process our newer invoices and pay our suppliers. And that was a mantra, basically, that we were going around the business to say, guys, the system works. You just need to use it in the correct way. Resilience. So the AP team, like I said, we increased our staff right the way up to 30. Just processing AP, that does not include our subcontractors. This is just our vendor invoices. And the team had to build a certain level of resilience. We had to put training sessions on for these guys as well to help them work through the pressure that they were under. And actually, you will know that a lot of AP people take their job really seriously and they take it really personally because they feel like they're to blame if invoices aren't being paid. They feel like they're letting the supplier down through no fault of their own. It was really, really important to get senior stakeholder buy-in. So by that, I mean our leadership team, and you may experience it, you may not, but some of our leaders are probably the worst at following process. We had to get away from being reactive to GRNing once an invoice came in. And that happened right the way across the business. You'd speak to people and say, well, you haven't GRN. Well, I haven't had a copy of the invoice. Well, you shouldn't need a copy of the invoice to GRN, basically. But that's a cultural piece. That's the way the business was that idea was baked into them for years. That's the way they worked. Workflows caused an added piece of complexity for us. And by that, I mean that people didn't really understand how to go in and address their workflows and deal with them. So we had workflows on price, we had workflows on GRN, we had workflows on invalid POs. And when they landed in somebody's queue, it was a case of, well, I don't really know what to do with it. So I don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to ignore it. So we had to get over the ignoring phase as well, where we had to kind of produce league tables of how many invoices were in people's workflows for resolution. So that was a bit of an eye-opener, because the minute you start producing league tables, that's the minute everybody wakes up, because nobody wants to be named and shamed on a league table. What else did we do? So we used our age creditors report and we enhanced it. So we have Power BI and we have a dashboard that gives us numerous reports, and we enhanced the age creditors report and made it available to everybody as well. So certain groups of people can go straight into the age cred and do a bit of self-serve. And that's another thing that we've really kind of encouraged, is self-serve. So we've used the age creditors report to slice and dice by legal entity, by business unit, by age, by approved, unapproved, by debit balances. So a wealth of powerful information in our Power BI age creditors report that was developed. And data, before, you know, a lot of people get very emotional about accounts payable and get very emotional about suppliers not being paid, but data has probably been my biggest ally. I'm an accountant by trade, so I like to use data to prove a point and say, actually, these are the areas of the business that are non-compliant. How are we going to work with them to make things better? What do they need? Do they need more training? Do they need a site visit? Do they need somebody to screen share with them to walk them through what it is they need to do? There were so many angles, and we use data for so many reasons, i.e. we did week on week movement with our invoices, we did aging of our invoices, we use the data to help us tackle where we had the problems. So, like I said, this is a bit of a graph around our vendor invoice processing. The blue line shows you the volume of invoices that weren't processed, and I've plugged this from the 2nd of September, and the registered invoices that we actually had and processed and that were in workflow. And you can see at the start of the year, we kind of had from September, October time, we had a bulk of invoices that were not processed. We had in excess of 10,000 invoices at the beginning of September that hadn't been processed, sat in folders, coming in. We had invoices coming out of our ears and invoices that were hitting multiple mailboxes too. That was another problem because we were duplicating, triplicating effort on invoices that had come in. So we put an initiative in and thought, right, okay, for the first 2 weeks, what are we going to do? Rather than have invoices sat in folders, we thought it was better to actually have the invoices shelled on the system, so we had complete visibility of all invoices that were outstanding on the system, whether they were approved, unapproved, or sat in workflow. So every day for 2 weeks, we down-tooled the entire AP team, that's 30 people, sat down-tooled them for an hour every day. All they did was shell the invoices to get them on the system. We were operating basically on a good 2.5 month backlog. And as you can see with the graph, it's starting to kind of plateau off. We're now at kind of 13,000 invoices, which is about right for us. It's a rolling month of invoices that we receive to process. So statistics, these are some of the statistics that we produce on a monthly, weekly basis. And what this is showing us is actually what is our first touch. So an invoice coming in, going on the system and going right the way through for approved, ready to pay basically. And on average, we've built that percentage up as compliance has got better. And I say better in tongue in cheek, really. We're not where we need to be. But we're averaging now about 35% of our volume going straight through into a ready paid status, basically. We still have, on average, 20% of our invoices going straight into workflow. Now, that's not great. Of our volume coming in, we've got 20% that goes straight into workflow, which means there is a problem with it straight away. There's either a PO issue with it, price, quantity, GRN. There is something wrong with that invoice that we can't process. And then on average, on a monthly basis, as you can see, it's 57% of those invoices that are going into workflow that we're having to process all the way through, i.e. do a resolution to that query and move it to pay. So on average, you can see, like I said, there's 14,000 invoices that we have that's in our BAU state. So the interesting bit is the AP headcount. As you can see, in January, we had 27 people working in accounts payable. And now we have 9 people. Now, 9 people excluding team lead and manager. So actually, we've got 11 people as at now working in accounts payable with roughly about the same volume of invoices that we have. Now, some of you will be going, how are you doing that? Why has that happened? Well, as most of you know, COVID-19 also hit everybody. And in looking at that, we had to look at our cost base. We had to look at the number of temps and contingents we had in. But also, we were looking at benchmarks across shared services and looking at the right level of level of number of people that we needed to have in AP, and there's a number of initiatives that we've had. So even though the numbers look quite big, the 14,000 actually splits across 4 legal entities, 4 main of our trading legal entities. So we've got J Murphy and Sons, we've got Murphy Plant, we've got Agility, which is a joint venture, and we've got MIL and MP, which is our Irish business. So you can see towards the right, the invoices pre-January, part of that volume. We've got 4,000 invoices, part of that 13,775 that are invoices that are already overdue for payment, and they are pre-1st of Jan 2020. So we're kind of moving in the right direction and we're improving. We're using the stats and we're using the data to help us target certain areas and on what we need to do. So really now, I mean, before when I showed you the graph, we had in excess of 10,000 invoices sat in folders. We now make a point of making sure every invoice that comes in within 24 hours is on the system. So we process that invoice, so we have nothing sat in our email folders waiting to go on, because at least that gives us a clear visibility of what we need to do and what we need to target, so that everything is on the system. We're using the system, we're not using offline tools to do things like that. So what did we do? It felt like we were climbing Mount Everest. It still does on days, to be honest with you. We introduced a task force. Now, what did the task force do? The task force were almost like our SMEs. They understood the end-to-end process. They understood how to fix things, but how to document things so that we were consistent. The task force then rolled out training. Any fixes that we were putting into the system, it was the task force that rolled those fixes out and trained the rest of the team. So it was really, really important to make sure we were communicating and we were letting people know of the changes that were coming about to help them do their job. Hypercare calls we were having on a daily basis. I mean, we probably had, when we went live, in excess of 300 ADOs. Now, ADOs is our system. It's called Azure DevOps. It's where the system we use to log issues, basically, that needed to be resolved. So hypercare calls, and those hypercare calls were made up of finance systems team, business owners, IT, and the program team, basically, because we very, very quickly had to resolve these issues, because slowly but surely it was going to cripple the business, especially from a supplier perspective. Site visits. It was really important to get out there. People, I think, you know, emailing people and giving them training material doesn't necessarily, one size doesn't fit all, basically. And personally, I think the face-to-face, the kind of sitting down, talking people through what it is that they need to do kind of really works. So we ran workshops right the way across the business. We held weekly super user calls. We held Skype training sessions. We held lunch and learns, we held drop-in centres, you name it. We used every avenue to get as many people there as possible, because actually you need to get rid of the excuses. People just say the system doesn't work. Well, actually it does. You're just missing something, and we need to sit and work that through with you. And once the penny drops, everybody's great. We're on to a winner. So we ran the end-to-end procurement workshops multiple times, and more importantly, we upskilled the AP team. And I think what everybody's forgetting is the fact that this system was new for everybody. It was a complete and utter change from the old system. So even the AP team needed to be upskilled. They needed to have repetitive training. They needed to be able to sit and work through a problem without feeling the pressure of, God, if I spend 15 minutes working through that or sitting with somebody, I'm not going to be processing invoices. We used enhanced reporting, so we used data analytics to drive compliance. Now, interestingly, the system now gives us so much visibility as to what the problems are and themes with suppliers. So we could target certain areas of the business. We could go in and home in on, actually, it's that same person week in, week out, month in, month out that is giving us the same issues. And it was important to be able to give the management and the leadership data as well. It was so important to show them that we were going to improve. This is going to be difficult, but we needed leadership buy-in to help us drive that message throughout the business. So we had Power BI and we had dashboards in there, and we give people access to those dashboards so that they can go and have a look, basically. I can't say hand on heart 100% that everybody does that, but anybody that comes to me, I'm like, there's a dashboard there, guys. There's an element of self-serve. You can go and self-serve. Now, we're not completely over that hurdle just yet, because the business still like to send us an email. Can you have a look at that for me? I'm thinking, well, you have got access. You can go in there and have a look yourself, really, rather than sending me an email. In fact, by the time you've sent me the email, you could have gone and had a look. So we did a lot of training around actually how can you tell to see whether an invoice is, one, on the system, and two, whether it's approved, or actually has it been paid? Because that's the million-dollar question. Has my invoice been paid? As I showed you with the reporting, we did daily reporting on volumes and weekly movement reporting. So it just showed us actually when are our peaks and troughs, when are the invoices coming in, where are we having issues, are we improving, are we not improving? We kind of had in our super user calls, actually, what are our themes? Have we got, is there anything else we can do in the system that will make it easier for us to process quicker? And that's where the daily huddles came in. We continued with our monthly team meetings. Communication is so important, and it's really hard. That's probably one of the toughest things I kind of have to do with the team is they're so anxious about wanting to get on and do their job. It's like, well, actually, let's just stop. Let's breathe, take a step back and think about what it is that we're trying to achieve. Let's think longer term, because when they're in the problem and they're pedaling, that's all they can focus on. The blinkers come in and that is it. And you just think, no, we've got to break the cycle. If we're having a problem and we're putting a plaster over it, that's when we're going wrong. We need to take the plasters off and fix the problem. We continued to do our one-to-ones, monthly one-to-ones and performance reviews throughout all of this, because people are important. They need the time to be able to just step away and talk and have somebody listen as well and provide the context of where we are. But also, I think when things are going wrong all the time, everybody focuses on what's going wrong. They don't think about all the great stuff that actually has gone right and we've fixed. And that's what I used to use the monthly team meetings for, is actually, guys, look at the progress that we're making. It might not feel visible on a day-to-day basis, but we are making progress. And the smaller things, you know, they're just as important as well. And then, as I said, we introduced cross-skilling and working from home. As we know, COVID-19 hit, entire shared service centre working from home, and actually considering, you know, I can say that actually change isn't a great thing, but they have been fantastic in adapting to this change and working from home, and with a reduced number of staffing, which also causes a level of anxiety, thinking, God, you know, our volume of work hasn't gone down, but we've got a reduced number of people. How are we going to deliver this? And actually, they are delivering it. I think the subtle changes that we're bringing in every day, every week is helping. So they're doing a fantastic job, and there's just so much more that they have done. So reporting, to just give you a snapshot, that's a snapshot of our Power BI tool that shows our age creditors report. And as you can see down the left hand side, I can put a date range in there. I can do it by an individual legal entity or all legal entities, it doesn't matter. I can even break it down by business unit, by vendor type. So I could go in there and look at vendors, I could look at a vendor group for intercompany, or I could look at a vendor group for EU, and so on and so forth. So it enables us to slice and dice the data that suits. I can also download that data into Excel. So although it gives me a snapshot of vendor aging, it also gives me a line level aging breakdown as well. So very quickly, I could go in and have a look at a supplier on there and download that and see actually what's happening with that particular supplier. What is the aging on there, which is really quite a powerful tool for us, because it's a one-stop shop. I don't have to go anywhere else to look at approved, unapproved lookups. It is all there, and I can look at a supplier that spans multiple legal entities in one go on here. To the right, most of you will be familiar with the statistics on payment practices. So this is a standard tool and a standard report that's built into D365, but now I can report on our payment practices per legal entity from the system. So that gives me a snapshot of, actually from a reporting perspective, what's overdue, what my statistics are from a reporting point of view, which is something that we now report on a monthly basis. And interestingly, our payment practices submission in December just gone was 24 days. Now, some of you are going to think, wow, 24 days, but let me tell you what the system does, because obviously everybody knows that payment practices is based on the date we receive the invoice, not the date of the invoice. So of course, when we went live with a new system, there's a lot of suppliers ringing up and chasing payment of invoices, and we're saying, well, we haven't got them. We don't know where they are, because a lot of the business, as I said, they're used to GRNing based on an invoice. So the business is used to having the invoice sent directly to them to GRN without sending the invoice on. So of course, a lot of our volume of invoices were going on the system as if we'd only just received them, irrespective of the date. So this is a snapshot. I've put February's in there of our key performance indicators. What are the kind of things that we measure on here? So we look at debit balances per supplier, what our supplier statement reconciliations look like, the average time it takes us to pay for JMS and MPL. We look at key messages. Now this is a snapshot of a report, one of 5 reports that go to the finance leadership team. So there's accounts payable, R2R, AR, fixed assets, master data. But this is about key messages and current initiatives. It's a great way of documenting actually what has gone well in the month and what are we focusing on? What are the things that we need to improve on, basically? So it gives a really good overview and a snapshot visually of where we are and what the progress is and what are our initiatives, how are we going to improve this situation. So the exciting bit, technology. So we introduced last year RPA, and the robot is called Joe. So we've engaged with a company called Sevita, and we're using Joe the robot to do many things now, apart from and not limited to processing our invoices on the system. So what does Joe the robot actually do? It takes a PDF of an invoice, it scrapes the data and it logs onto D365, so it's got its own login, so we know exactly where it's been in its audit trail. And basically it goes and enters all the information into D365 and attaches the invoice. So it checks the supplier, checks the VAT, puts the total amount in, and puts an employee reference in and attaches the invoice. And actually what that means is the AP clerk can just go in and they can just pick up the invoice, and carry on processing it. Now, it might seem like a simple thing, but it's kind of a non-value add activity that we've taken away from the team. So Joe the robot is processing in excess of 4,000 invoices per month, which saves us 16 days per month. That's 16 days of processing a month that we're getting Joe the robot to do. The link there, the Murphy transforms processes within final shared services and improves data migrations. So we use Joe the robot during our data migration process from AX to D365. We probably had about 5 Joes going at the same time with the amount of data that we had. But what else are we using Joe the robot for at the moment? So not only are we using Joe the robot to process in excess of 4,000 invoices a month, we're using Joe the robot to data cleanse. Data cleanse our purchase orders, i.e. closing them. We're now using Joe the robot to reverse GRNs, Doing GRN reversals in AX09 was an easier task, not so easy in D365, and we've been prone to human error, so we thought, actually, let's just get the robot to do it. So Joe the robot now is also reversing GRNs. We've also trained Joe the robot to process a purchase requisition in the system as well. We have Murphy Plant is a separate legal entity, JMS engage with Plant to hire, and we have to raise a purchase order now to hire that plant. So it's a new thing, it's a new process that's come into play with the implementation of D365. So what do? We get Joe the robot to go in, scrape the data again, go into D365, log on and enter the details. So all this manual repetitive tasks that are non kind of value add, we're kind of getting Joe the robot to do, which is fantastic really for us. What kind of things are we embarking on in the future with Joe the robot? So we're looking at things like journal processing. So we know that takes an age for people, and the volume of journals the R2R team receive, again, they store in a folder. Joe will go in, pick it up, process it, upload it. Again, it adds value. Joe the robot adds a lot of value to us, but it gets rid of the kind of the time element that we're having to wait to process. So fantastic piece of technology that is really helping us out. So the future, what does the future hold for us? Before COVID-19, we signed a contract with Proactis. Some of you may use it, some of you may not. But that is on hold at the moment. Hopefully in a month or so, we're looking to reignite the implementation of that. Along with that, we're going to look at trying to consolidate volumes of our invoices and doing that through EDI. We have an extortionate amount of invoices that kind of come in from suppliers, and we're looking to rationalize the volume and go towards more of a consolidated invoicing approach really, and that should all come within the third quarter of this year, which again, volume wise, it will start to help AP from a processing point of view. And then enhanced D365. So for example, at the moment we have nominal invoices, and nominal invoices is an offline signing process. We never built a workflow into the system for nominals. So now we're looking to enhance D365 wherever we can so that everything is on system rather than off system. Process point of view. So we've been live now for near on 10 months. And it's become very apparent that we need to do a full review of our delegation of authority. So the delegation of authority is what's built into D365 from a workflow perspective, and some areas of our workflows have become cumbersome. We've got 5-7 layers of workflow, which obviously slows things down. So it's become really apparent that we need to do a full end-to-end review of our P2P process and our workflows and inherent delegation of authority. We're currently doing supplier rationalization. That's our procurement team, our data cleansing at the moment. So they're analyzing the data and thinking, God, we've not used this supplier since we went live. So why have we got it on the system? So if we reduce the base of our suppliers, it makes it easier again from a processing point of view. And as I mentioned before, we're going to look at consolidated invoicing. So people. So we're going to cross-skill the team to work more horizontally. At the moment, our structure is very vertical. So you either work on JMS, you work on MPL, you work on Ireland, you work on agility. And actually, it's become really, really important that, you know, we employ people as an AP specialist. We don't employ them as a JMS specialist or an MPL specialist. And it's really important that we cross-skill people and we work more horizontally so that wherever the pressure is, we can move the resource to that particular area. We've developed a skills matrix. Unfortunately, given COVID-19, we've not been able to implement it, but it's a definite development tool that we're looking at so that it gives people something to aim for. And we're looking to introduce apprenticeships from September, all being well. Again, it's just showing the level of commitment in the future and where we want to go and what we want to do and what we want to do to improve. It's been, you know, one hell of a journey. It's the first 12 months were a lift and shift of processes to the shared service centre. And then the last 12 months has all been around implementing D365, embedding it and improving the way we work, improving compliance, and cross-skilling people and getting us to a better place. On that note, I would like to say thank you very much. Thanks for your time. That was a whistle-stop tour of the last 12 months. I'm pretty sure the next 12 months are going to be just as exciting and challenging. I want to thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, then please feel free to get in touch. Thank you very much.